We also have the engine here I'm going to show you, and we have the shock package that I'm going to show you. When I do show you, you have to excuse us because, again, this shop is not completely dialed yet. Are you that close to my face? Where are you at? What the fuck, dude? This thing's just encroaching on me. Ready? Cool. Willys update. War wagon. It's just too lame. We'll get something. I don't know if Thelma is a good one. I like Thelma, you know. Rose, I like Rose. Rose is kind of nice. Anyways, the names don't matter right now. The update matters. Just about squared away on the sheet metal. I take a pause there because I want to see how to navigate where how I'm gonna express the direction. Over time with this, it made sense to look into alternatives versus steel fenders and rocker panels and all that. I go, okay, what is the longevity of this? How many hours is it gonna take me to shape all this? Not just this, but all of this that you don't see. Probably 1,000, realistically. Nicely finished. You take this truck testing. This is gonna be a full trophy truck spec build. So you're doing 100+ miles an hour down Barstow, Maine. Full compression, over and over, rocks. You do one test lap. What happens when the rocks get kicked up into the fenders that are all steel and this thing's all painted? It's like reverse hail marks. I can't wrap my head around that and the repeatability of that. It just doesn't make sense. And the thing is, I would never want to build this to the point where we don't want to use it. Even my client, same thing. He's like, I want to be able, can we jump it? Is it going to do the same stuff Vivian's going to do? Absolutely, and better. So with that, doesn't make sense to do all of this out of steelwork. If this was a hot rod or a street rod, I'd for sure do that. I'd keep it clean, drive it on the streets, even if it was just for looks, cool. But for heavy duty, needs to be composite or it needs to be fiberglass. So piggybacking on what we're doing with the Range Rover, and you're gonna get this update with the Range Rover, a change order, versus what I talked about last time. Last time it was clay sculpting, and we're gonna divert a little bit and we're gonna go into 3D scanning, 3D printing and prototyping, and then carbon composite. So with this, what I'm going to do is, I got the roof. This is all we need. I'm gonna have all this scanned, have this thing set up almost where the Range Rover is. We'll have the chassis under here. We'll have it at full compression. The axle will be in, the front suspension will be in, the grill, the one piece, I'll have at least the headlights and the grill placed where they need to be, and then we're gonna scan it. Once they scan it, I'm gonna go in there and I'm already gonna start doing the renderings right now. I have enough pictures to do the renderings. I'm gonna draw out all the fenders, draw the running boards out, and then, you know, draw the inlet for the coolers in here, which will be below sea level. There won't be a roof scoop. I know some of you guys talked about that on the comments from the last video. I do agree. I think the side scoops and the rear quarter windows, that's an extreme thing. I think if we do negative ducting, meaning we don't pierce the actual exterior surface, that's the move. Same with the roof. I think that if we just have an inlet going down and we don't have a big, you know, positive shape of a scoop, that's the move. So I agree with a lot. I saw many comments like that. We'll get all of this scanned, and then what we'll do is they will produce a 3D cap for the whole roof, which will go right to the drip rail, which will be glued in, and that'll be all carbon. This whole running board area, the rear fender, all that will be carbon fiber. And then this front clip where the hood is and the grill is and the fenders are, I want to get it where this whole thing is a one-piece front clip, but it's a Willys Wagon one-piece front clip. Integrated grill, integrated lights. So I'm going to get it as far as it needs to be with that. I don't need to do more steel work. The only steel work I was going to show you guys. Something else to note, windshield visibility. If you look at this now, this is 3 inches higher than it was. It was really chopped. If you go back, if you kind of look where this was, this radius would start here. So, you know, you had about that much of a window turret. So what I did is I raised that up 3 inches, sectioned it, put it all back in, body worked it, and now there's perfect visibility. So when we do the cage in there and you're sitting up into the bubble of this thing, you're still gonna be able to see, and you're not gonna be in this little turret that's far down. But going back to this, the doors, there's rockers in here. You can look at this stuff. So all this is all steel rocker. This is brand new. It's rolled. This is all 1/8 inch, so it's structural. It's tied into the body, and then it's fully boxed sheet metal in here. So it's not only to, you know, fill in the sheet metal that was deteriorated, and plus the doors are stretched now. It's also a rigidity thing. It's a great tie-in point. So that's done on both sides. Now what I'm doing is I'm shoring these doors. They were tacked together for mock-up, but they're too tight now. And so I have to cut them in half. And then I need to actually body work all this area, which is, it's not as much of a challenge as it was when I started this. I've learned a lot as far as metal shaping, and not so much metal shaping, but just being able to fill in areas and have them not be wavy and bumpy and messed up. If you think about a lot of my like fabrication skill set, when someone's told me, like for reference, hey, fill in a hole in the firewall, I would fuck it all up. Just a hole in a firewall, because I didn't know the basics of just heat and, you know, how much rod you put in, what size rod, you know, your fitment, like everything. I didn't have it down. And so now I understand it enough where I can see how things move, how things expand and contract, or shrink and stretch. And we'll get these doors dialed in. One of the things to note here, and see, this is too tight now. If I put a foot into this thing, it would close, but it's too tight. It's all squared up now. So one of the things to note is there's a dive here now, and there's also a roll. So there's a front to rear roll. If you look from the top, you'd see kind of a curvature. And then same here, where this dives down, this has a 1/2 inch chop. So, you know, the drip rail from the B pillar to the A pillar actually dives down, so it makes this really nice curve. But you see all these sections in here. This is just another thing to chew on, is I have guides to not only, you know, guide me on what this looks like here and how much arch there should be, but also I have to have a top view guide and an arch. So there's an X and a Y that has to be fit, so when this door closes, it fills all the body, like in the drip rail. It's a lot of work. You don't realize how much stuff changes. Again, there's probably guys that, you know, you guys are watching this and you've done this kind of work before. I haven't. It's not so much a series of mistakes or anything. It's just learning as you go. Fortunately, it hasn't been shooting myself in the foot. I've thought about quite a bit of it. Part of an easy out here is getting away with putting a cap on this thing and not having to do the upper roof section. Makes the most sense. But like filing out the doors is my next bit. The next update is going to be this on the chassis table. So we're at that spot. Like I said, I'm gonna finish the doors. I'm gonna cut out the dash in here. You know, as much as I like this, we do need to run tubes and we need to run chassis in here. So what you'll see next is gonna be the Y frame. You'll have the lower arms in here. For the center pivot, you'll have a Y frame. It'll span out and it'll go to the trailing arm and the upper link pivots, which will probably somewhere in this area. Trailing arms on, rear axle housing. We'll set this thing at compression. I'm assuming all of this is gonna go away and the tire is gonna be chunked into this portion too. We'll set it at compression, and then we're gonna have enough to start building everything from like the A pillar up and rearward. We're still waiting on the machined uppers and the machined uprights for the front. and then all the sway bars. But that stuff, like, you know, with where the lower arm is in the front, I can get a guide on where the center line is for the wheel, for the front wheel. So I don't need those parts, but I don't want to start pulling tubes out there. I just need to keep going. And that, you know, getting the Y-frame and getting the axle and the trailing arms is going to be enough for us to party. We also have the engine here I'm going to show you, and we have the shock package that I'm going to show you. When I do show you, you have to excuse us because, again, this shop is not completely dialed yet. There's still messes here that I'm not happy with because I want my gallery in here, and it's just not there yet. I'm grateful, but this is my first place I've ever owned. Lots of tooling that we didn't have that we're still having to purchase, lots of organization, lots of refinements. Even the lights now, we're kind of realizing the way they are. You know, I have the center bays of the shop 2 feet higher than the rest. To move forklifts in and out if you're carrying stuff, but you know, we got to adjust the lighting. We just got to find an ebb and flow of what works here. We have a good baseline of organization, but now we just need to tighten everything. So what we're going to do is this whole thing is going to come off of this table or fixture, jig, whatever you want to call it, which really isn't true. It's enough to get the job done here, but it's not rigid enough to really square a chassis into. So we're going to transfer this whole thing onto our chassis table, which is 1 inch thick, Blanchard ground, drilled, tapped, you know, one of the best chassis tables I've ever seen. So we'll put it on there, and then we're going to start plugging tubes into here. That's where it gets really exciting, because when we do that, it starts to turn into this skeletal system of this car, and we don't build them where we just get like the basics. Like, we don't just cover the driver constraints and then run down tubes. Like, we're going to build a Willys tube chassis that's a wagon. So when you take this body off, you'll literally see this like full-on SUV chopped 2-inch chassis structure, and that's always one of the more exciting times. Fully prepped tubes, dynamic layout. We're going to favor 3 seats. I already have red flags coming up of challenges, and I guess red flags is a bad thing, but I just see that that's going to be a challenge. So we want to structure everything we can together. We want to look at the engine, the transmission, the underdrive, the rear shocks, the front seats, the rear seat, and the axle at compression, and we want to chuck all those into the equation to see how we're going to run these tubes. I like to run tubes, I like to draw tubes through, so anywhere we can run something dynamic that's diagonally cutting through the chassis, or doing some kind of long run, I like to run the biggest stuff we can through and then tie them together instead of building little chunks. I hope that makes sense, but even if it doesn't, you can watch us do it when we're doing it. I did get some comments about wanting to see the work. Part of me says move on. Part of me says I think that would be a value too, and I think we're working towards that. That involves a lot more logistical planning. When I did the Fab Diaries, it was setting up a camera. I was solo. I had less guys working. The business was not what it is now. So I had a little more time to delegate that. That's setting up a camera for different shots. It's monitoring storage capacity. It's monitoring battery in the camera. It's monitoring battery in a microphone. It's making sure the microphone is on. Does that render a more involved and more entertaining piece of content? For sure. Logistically, is it manageable for me right now? No. That's where we need to, and we have motion going towards finding a crew and having guys here full time that can film that stuff, and then Joey's plate's going to be full and he's going to be editing it. So I think we're going to have to not just dive in, you know, head first. We're just going to step into this thing and get it to where it flows. So you can expect for there to be hands-on content. If I could streamline myself more while we're building this stuff, even if I could just shoot it horizontal, stack it like that, you know, and show you some mid-process, I think that'll be of value. And I'll just try to commit to doing that with the Willys project right now. So let's go look at the shocks and let's look at the engine. We got 2 sets here. This is for Ruth, the F100. Do you guys remember the F800? And Cameron, Evelyn was the name. That changed a bit, had some directional changes, life changes, everything, and now that's back. But we're gonna plug all those parts into an F100 that's chopped 3 inches, super cab, so like Vivian, but you know, full plate frame, all the big stuff, Godzilla motor, Whipple charged, 4.5 inch front, 4.5 inch rear bypass. Sick tangents, I know. So the Willys package is 4.5 bypass rear with a piggyback reservoir, and then a 4-inch bypass front. All 4 corners is a 3-inch coilover. This is like Brett's signature color package that he likes, and I do work closely with Brett King. So he helps us out and I help him out by representing King with, you know, his ideal color package. So there's always going to be blue caps except for Dolly. Dolly will get green. Anyways, this stuff should be plugged in, at least in the rear when we get that next update. Also running billet machine trailing arms. So it should be an awesome package. Rancho transmission, TubeWorks underdrive, and this engine that we're going to look at right now. All right, this is a 632 GM Performance big block. I don't know the torque. I know that it's 1,000 horsepower. Fuel injected, nice turnkey, reliable power. Our plan for this is to run a daily engineering dry sump. They're currently prototyping a sump pan for this. And then Josh Frey, who's designing a lot of the stuff for the Range Rover for us, he's going to design us a front plate, a mid plate, and then all on the front plate is going to be the accessory drive. 2 alternators, power steering pump, and AC compressor. So it looks big. Not concerned about it. I think this is the ideal motor for this thing. You know, with big blocks like I used to have, my buddy's dad, Kurt, he passed away. Kurt Barron used to talk about big blocks. He had this old 460 F100. And he's always like, oh, you know, he'd be drinking beers and he'd be like, you know, the difference between a big block and a small block? He's like, you hear a small block. He's like, you feel a big block. And that's been the truth. Anytime I like something pulls up, like an old Camaro or something that has a big block, it's very reassuring that there's a big block in there. You know it's there. And I think for the Willys, that's what I'm going for, is a thunderous hot rod. No turbos, no blowers, no small displacement, just a big, nasty big block. So we're gonna start with this. If we do need to go through it, and you know, like I need to look up how these things are doing, because I've had some feedback that they do need to have a couple upgrades done on them to be as reliable as we need. So if we need to, we'll do that. But this is gonna be our base, and we'll start plugging this stuff into the chassis spatially, just to know where we can land things. I probably will get this covered up. Mid plate is going to take a little bit to do, so we'll probably just put spacers in between that and the trans. The trans will be a mock-up. We'll have the real underdrive on there. That at least gets us our front to rear and our sizing. Again, on this, I want to run dual intakes and dual filters. Those will come out on the side of the car, but really it's just going to be getting this thing in there, fixing it so we know where the tube work needs to go, and then we can clean that up and clean the details up after that. All right, I'm going to put this back and we'll go over there. Last piece to the puzzle here, shaved taillights. This is all that extension. So this is a 3-inch extension of the D-pillar. And then all this is where the taillight used to live. Both sides it's shaved like that. So I wanted to delete these guys. What's gonna happen here is there's plenty of room to get the party started with the 40, the tire getting in here and going to compression. Like I was mentioning, I think a lot of this is gonna go away, but I just got the bare bones. And then I know that this fender is gonna come up and it's gonna draw, and it's not gonna go all the way down, but it's gonna just draw off the car like this. So at some point, there's gonna be a clipping point where we don't even need this body. That's why I didn't finish it much down here. The other thing is, on this hatch, that's gonna go away. So you have to think whatever the approach angle, if I put a tire, a 40-inch tire at full compression down here, then I'm gonna wanna draw a nice streamline angle that comes up here. So whenever that car hits some kind of G-out and it pops up, it's not clipping something hanging, you know, back behind the rear axle line. So this is gonna draw up somewhere, and then whatever we get here this is just gonna be a carbon panel, some kind of latch panel. I think we're gonna sink a spare into that thing like a hot piece of butter, and we're just gonna put a spare into there, maybe, you know, where 20% of it sinks into the carbon, and then there'll be extraction and ventilation. So this is, like I said, last time you see the Willys not being on the chassis table, and then it's gonna live there for a little bit. Should have enough structure in here to show something next time.